Welcome to Future Voices by Katherine Lu. I'm Katherine, your hostess, and today I'm excited to be joined by Rekha Narang, Director of Partner Technology at Microsoft with over 13 years of experience growing into senior leadership roles. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Catherine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, you've grown at Microsoft for over 13 years into a director leading many leadership roles. What do you think helped you stand out and continue advancing in such a competitive environment?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a number of things. So if I think about my leadership journey, and I think what kind of allowed me to kind of stay in a leadership role and really thrive in a leadership role, one is I say leading authentically, right? And what does that mean? It is like saying what I think, saying what I feel, saying what I believe, and really standing up for that. And that includes, also when I'm out of my depth, right? So, really sharing when I don't know something. And I think just being true to who you are makes you a really credible leader and helps you stand out. I think another dimension is leading with transparency. So I think, when you're a transparent person, when you're not holding on to things and you can really show people that you are a transparent, honest person, it builds trust in you. And as a leader, it helps you build psychological safety, which is a really important thing. I think another dimension is leading with curiosity. I think of some of my favorite things that I say when people tell me stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? It means that you're always growing. So I think when you demonstrate that you're a person that's genuinely curious, has a growth mindset, you really set yourself apart as a dynamic person who's easily adaptable. And that has always been true, that that's something that we need in the workplace. I think more than ever, we need people who are highly adaptable and can kind of have some resilience when it comes to change. I think another thing I think that's interesting to reflect on is I don't actually try to do it all. And I don't think I ever really demonstrated that. And what does that mean? It means that I put a lot of intention into prioritizing the stuff that matters most and focusing on that. And I think that was seen and observed in me very early on in my career, which kind of set me up for leadership roles because people had trust that I'd be able to follow through and execute on the things that mattered most.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having a very strong, what we call say do ratio. So when I say something, I do it, I follow through. So, always showing up as, somebody who's accountable and will follow through on things that you sign up for. And it also demonstrates that you can move with speed as well. So like, I don't take too long to act on something. So, I think that, early in my career, like I was spotted as somebody who would like, I'll go try something. I'll go test something out. I don't need things to be perfect for me to kind of execute. And then the final thing I think that, I think helped differentiate me amongst others maybe is, I really reframe failures as opportunities to learn. I think it's a really, really important thing. I think, again, it's more important than ever. With my career, the bulk of my career being spent in technical delivery, where I was, either on delivery teams or leading delivery teams where you're accountable for delivering like a range of customer outcomes, you encounter failures daily, right? You have, an opportunity to learn through, oh, this isn't quite what we thought it was going to be, but like, how do we pivot? How do we figure this out? So really showcasing how you navigate when things don't go as expected, when you fail, and how you lead teams through those moments and give people an opportunity to rise up really showcases who you are.
So I like a lot of that experimental, like trial and error, and then also that work and life balance, right?
100%. So the balance is so important because
Yeah.
we're in this for the long game, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure. And was there any like defining moment in your career that changed how you were as a leader?
There actually was. And I think, I was put into leadership positions even before I didn't have, have leadership titles, like very early in my career. So I think I've had a natural gravitation towards it. I think people have a natural gravitation towards putting me in leadership positions. Again, I think it goes back to that say-do ratio, that, risk-taking kind of mindset that's put me there. But it didn't mean that I still didn't go through, some reflection, or if you want to call it like a crisis of consciousness on like, am I really fit to be a leader? I think that inflection point happened for me when I moved from a delivery leadership role, which I spent the bulk of my career doing, technical delivery roles, into more of a technical sales leader. And that was a shift in my career, an intentional shift that I made. I wanted to make that move, and I'm really glad I did. But when I made that move, I had to go through a whole reframing of what kind of leader do I want to be? And I wasn't really sure I fit the mold if I looked at the people around me, who had more years of, pure sales experience than I ever had. So I was like really asking myself questions like, am I cut out for this? And I happened to have a leadership coach at that time. And part of the things that we were discussing when I was thinking about like, should I go back to my old, my old role, my old domain? Should I stay here? Like I was having a bit of a inflection point. And he just asked me a really simple question. He's like, what kind of leader do you want to be? Right. And then, I'm a reflective person. So people ask me questions. I don't want to just give like a simple answer. I want to think about it. I want to reflect on it. And what I did, like the answer I came up with was, I just want to be a leader that people want to work with and work for. Like I want, if I'm hiring, I want people to see my team as a destination team. And he's like, okay, well then go lead like that. So what that meant was it meant just following my heart and just being like a people first leader and worrying less about the domain specifics of what I was doing, but putting people really in the center of, how I wanted to lead. And this was like kind of early when we were like, voices and philosophers like Brene Brown and Adam Grant were really kind of driving this rethink on what leadership actually looks like. And a lot of, big companies were changing, their leadership frameworks to be more people centric. So, I just said, if this doesn't work out, if this isn't what the organization wants from me, then I'll go find a place that does. So I took a bit of a risk, but I feel like it's one that I had to take. And it worked out for me. And, it worked out for me in multiple ways, but I think when I kind of made that really intentional shift to be just like okay with leading the way that I wanted to versus the way I felt like I should, I actually won Manager of the Year at Microsoft Canada, which was a career high for me, right? And never really been an award chaser by any means, but it was validation that, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. So that was like a really pivotal point to really unlocking, the way I wanted to lead.
Definitely. Wow. Your journey's incredible. How come you had that pivot of like where you started versus like what kind of field you're developing in now?
It's part of just my career journey, right? So I spent, 20-ish years in direct customer delivery, which was amazing. I learned so much. And I loved being, in the day-to-day customer delivery, really helping to solve their problems, seeing how to take the technology that was sold to make it work to solve their problem.
Mm-hmm.
But after doing it for about 2 decades, I was looking for a shift. So, I now work in the partner side of our business at Microsoft. So I'm like, hey, how do I take all this customer experience and then go work with our partners and do something that's at scale? So I was really interested in the scale of what we could accomplish in the partner organization. So it was an intentional move to kind of make a shift in my career. And that came with a whole bunch of like ambiguity and uncertainty, which I'm glad I pushed through, right? Like, even though it was like brand new, I anchored myself on, again, my authenticity, my skills, my confidence in myself, and I was able to make the shift.
It's very inspiring.
Thanks.
Now, I have a couple questions on AI, especially the integration towards the more teen and the new gen. So, my first question is how there's so much excitement in AI and just that industry of technology in general. So, from your perspective, how is AI actually transforming businesses at an enterprise level beyond just the hype of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, we're seeing it happen real time, right? And I think the best way to reflect back on it is to reflect how it's changed me and, how I do my job. And so, of course, being a Microsoft employee, I was one of the people that had early access to Copilot, right? So, if I roll back the clock, a couple of years ago when I was, one of the people that early access, and just seeing how like, an AI productivity assistant like Copilot just dramatically changed how I could do my job. right? And of course, that's been a journey since that first moment in time. But I think one of the stories that I tell is, I was on a large call, a workshop, long running call, which those are complex and those can be really hard to navigate. And it does require a lot of, texting follow up by the person facilitating the call. And I was the only person who actually had the license at the time. And we were transcribing the call, and I prompted with Copilot, and instead of the individual running the meeting having to do a whole bunch of extra stuff to kind of do the follow up and follow through, we were able to do it in the moment and have it reason over the discussion, synthesize the key pillars, like talk about the next steps. So again, a really simple use case now when we think about it, but at that moment, it was just like, wow, this is something very different, right? And now the thing that I, as a human, would have spent a whole bunch of time on, that job is gone now. But my job isn't gone. Now I can spend time doing the job I was actually hired to do, which is being more creative, which is being more strategic, which is thinking more forward about the business. So, if I think about like historically, when I was talking about my journey in customer delivery, and I spent a lot of time leading very complex projects, complex programs for big enterprise customers. And, I had to work around the clock to do those deliveries because I had to make sure, every T was crossed, every I was dotted, everything was followed through. That was a manual thing I had to do that came at the expense of my personal time I was spending being a mother. And now, like the discipline of project management, you don't have to do that anymore. You can actually do the work to be proactive, right? So again, really, really simple use cases, but those are the types of things that now we're putting in the hands of people at scale so that we can create more time and space for higher value work. And that's what I'm experiencing, right? As a leader, I can spend a lot more time being on my front foot versus being on my back foot and being reactive. I can use Copilot as, a creative partner. Like today, I wanted to check in on some strategic initiatives, and I wanted to kind of send a pulse checks to kind of see how we're doing it. And Copilot helped me design all of those things, like things that would have taken me a long time to think through. Those barriers are just overcome really easily now. And those are just that's just the beginning, right? We call that pattern one, right? Like just really becoming savvy with AI as a productivity assistant. And I think that's where I'm really encouraging, when I talk to my partners, when we talk to customers, really leaning in and exhausting what's possible in just that initial first pattern and thinking through every move you make through your day, is this something that, you can actually delegate or get Copilot to help you kind of accelerate delivery of, so you can create that time and space for the bigger thinking, for the judgment tasks, for the risk analysis, for the things that you want to spend time on as leaders. Right. So we're absolutely, it is real. It is here. If somebody, we were talking yesterday in a call that if somebody took it away from us, I wouldn't be able to do my job the way I'm doing it right now. Right. And I can't think of a technology that has had that kind of impact on me and the way I lead in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it definitely shifted a lot of the workforce and how we're passing our daily lives now. This technology, it's going to be so different.
And I mean, just dream about the possibilities. It's really exciting. How can it really help transform industries like education, healthcare? The possibilities are endless. I mean, I think we think really carefully about smart and safe use of AI. We all have to be participating in setting policies and how we want to use it, and making sure that we have our voices included, so that we've got very diverse teams that are really part of the design process, because things can go very wrong if we don't do that, right? And so that's where it's wonderful to talk to the younger generation who are very savvy, but some of the words of encouragement I get people I talk to every day is, you don't opt out, opt in, and just start using it. Just play with it, see what's possible. Like yesterday I was on a call with my boss because one of my coworkers showed me how to start using agent mode in Excel, which took my prep for my monthly business review, quite honestly, from days to minutes. And more importantly than the time saving, it was the frustration savings, which is a huge drain on you. right? And then I was teaching him how to do it. So we're all in this learn together kind of mindset, which is actually really fun. It's a really fun cycle to be in.
I'm actually very curious, how is Microsoft implementing like their AI usage?
We have, Copilot embedded in, all of our products. If you look across all of our platforms, integrated into Teams, integrated onto all our M365 products. If you look up our D365 products, we have so much first party, agentic capabilities built in. So it's pervasive across our product set. And in terms of internal adoption, like we have a constant drumbeat on like how we are modeling the way forward as customer zero and leading, with our own internal uses of AI, including Copilot, and not just limited to AI. We have an AI center of excellence. So we have somebody whose job it is to kind of look across our organization to see how we can make improvements leveraging AI. So it is everywhere. It is just, the shift is so palpable, right? Like, we became an AI company, and we're all thinking about when the word be used, the phrase be used as being frontier, right? This is the next frontier for us. So how are we modeling being a frontier organization?
Wow.
It's really
Yeah, that's incredible. For my second AI-based question, as AI continues to evolve, what skills do you think students should be developing today at this moment to stay relevant and stay competitive throughout the future workforce?
And this is a really active conversation in my house with my two young sons. It's a really active conversation with my group of friends. We all have kids who are, in high school, going to university, and we're paying attention to the shifts that, are happening. And a lot of the people that I mentor ask me the same question. And, it's very hard to have a crystal ball, right? And, all I can reflect on is, I think about as a hiring manager, and I think it's a shift I've made, even before we were really fully kind of in this AI cycle we're in now, is hiring for people who can learn, right? So one of the questions I ask in all of my interviews, I've been asking it for years, is tell me how you learn. What's your approach to learning? I ask open-ended questions because what I really want to hear about is how much do you invest in your continuous learning? What does that look like on a daily, weekly basis? And if you're not somebody who's doing that, that is a flag for me as a hiring manager, because more than ever, we need people who can keep up with the pace of change, and that comes with a real curiosity to always be learning. So the advice I give people now, when we're kind of looking at like, what university program should I go into, more than ever, and I think it's a shift that I've made in my advice, is go learn what you love. Because the time, and if you have the privilege, the ability to go and pursue a university education, which isn't available to everybody, but that's, for the people who can, it's, if you have that opportunity to just go and like spend that time growing and learning, I think that will serve you well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, the skill is going to be needed more than ever when it comes to, what our jobs look like into the future, is our ability to learn as new things come out, to pivot. And so I think pursuing what you enjoy doing will just help harness that love of learning and that curiosity. I am deeply interested, and I was talking to my son the other day. I'm like, you want to create space for electives like, ethics, philosophy, right? And because I think about just the more deeper thinking, and I, as an engineer, like, those were always the courses I took as electives when I could fit them in, right? I took, literature courses. I love my ethics course. Like, and I've always loved philosophy. And my dad's a guidance counselor. We used to talk a lot about, different, philosophical topics. I think really stretching your brain and wandering over topics like that and spending time doing that is going to serve us really well. And we're going to, we're already in a space where we have to think about, holistic problem solving, and not just looking at as technology solve a problem, but have we thought through all the ramifications of everything from environmental impacts to ethical impacts and whatnot. So building an understanding on that, I think, is more important than ever. So like, just lean into the learning and, be open to risks, be open to change. And I think we can build our future together.
I like that, yeah. It's always like being open to like being curious and exploring new things. Like, yeah, I do also think that's really important. Could you share a piece of advice that you have for young girls who want to go into the technology field, but they don't feel comfortable or they don't feel like they have the opportunity to?
Absolutely. It's part of my life's work to get that message out. And which is why I love doing things like this. And even though I don't love standing on stages or holding microphones, I do it so that people can, hopefully see themselves in that too. Um, I think one of the barriers that I've seen is people think a career in technology is something that it isn't. I think it kind of can elicit images of sitting by yourself, doing work in a dark room, spending time with, a program and a keyboard. And I think that's never been less true now, right? When we think about what's possible with development with AI. I don't think people really understand like how dynamic, how collaborative, how exciting, a career in technology can actually be. Like at the end of the day, we are solving problems, we are creating opportunities with technology. So you get to be a part of that in a career in tech. So it's like, I just think that there's this equation that a career in tech means I want to be a developer and I don't want to be a developer, so I'm going to opt out. If I look at the people that I've worked with at Microsoft, the expanse of their journeys to get there through arts, marketing, food science, theater, like it's always fascinating to me when I meet people in tech. Because very few people, like I'm one of those people that does have maybe more traditional kind of path, math degree, engineering degree, and went into tech. But I think there's more people who don't have that linear path. And they get there through different ways. And I think the one thing that's common is there's a true passion for technology, right? And how it can help, really, solve problems and move us forward. And I think if you have that, then you belong in tech. And quite frankly, every company is going to be a tech company, right? So, I think really building your comfort around that and getting over that barrier of fear on I can't do it. Again, maybe something you need help with your coaches and mentors, but just believe in yourself and have confidence in yourself that you can do it. And it's a really joyful profession to pursue.
Rekha, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts and your insights on the technology industry and also like your journey. Thank you so much for listening to Future Voices. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It was fun.